Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into this video today as I speak about the Montreal Canadiens, as I often do on this channel. I don't know why I started that way, but I did. I try to just be as natural as possible. Anyway, so we were pretty discouraged to start this week, right? Or should I say near the end of this week when the Canadiens had a pretty tough week, losing to the Pittsburgh Penguins and the LA Kings. They weren't scoring. They were getting scored against. They weren't defending very well. Our goaltenders, both of them were struggling. So I think a lot of us were discouraged pretty early this week, given the results. And we're going to talk about the New York Islanders game really quickly. But the reason I wanted to make this video today was because yesterday I realized that as much as the Canadiens have put it out there, but this whole in the mix conversation has just, been discussed ad nauseum. And we're hoping that the Canadiens will be playing meaningful games closer to the end of the season, closer than last year and the last 2 years before that, especially, right? So the reason I wanted to make this video today was to say that I was encouraged by the fact that a lot of the Canadiens' current young talent and prospects that are still going to be coming that we're excited about actually had a pretty good week with their respective teams. So before we dive into the specifics on what players did what, just having whether it was just a single goal or a couple assists or whatever, making positive impact production wise with their respective teams. Let's talk about the Canadiens week. Like I mentioned, they had a bit of a tough one. And last night against the New York Islanders, after the Islanders went up 2-0, I think you could hear Tony Marinaro yelling at Caden Primo practically, right? Because we know that he's not the president of the Caden Primo fan club. And a lot of us are still unsure of what to make of Caden, but he bounced back pretty solidly last night against the New York Islanders, and the Canadiens were able to still get a point in overtime after 9 rounds in the shootout. Caden Primo stood pretty tall for a while there, right? He did stand tall right near the end. He bounced back after letting in those 2 goals in the first period, and we all basically just were like, all right, we're done with this week, right? For the Canadiens, because a third loss in a row just wasn't gonna happen. We weren't going to accept it. And I personally was like, all right, this is just going to happen. We're going to lose. But we didn't, because you know what? Cole Caulfield is playing so inspired, with the Johnny Gaudreau number switch. He's the most inspired and frankly determined player on the Canadiens right now. He's got 6 goals in 6 games. And in fact, let's even pull it up for Caulfield here. 6 goals, 1 assist, 7 points in 6 games so far for the Canadiens. So he's still on pace for an 82 goal campaign here, right? But Cole is really standing out the most, of course, because of the goal scoring. I mean, we want to see him become a 40 goal scorer. It looks like he's on that path. But the way he's playing so determined really has kept the Canadiens alive, especially last night against the Islanders. We saw Logan Mailloux get his first NHL goal. He's on this list, and basically what I'm going to go through is about 10 to 12 players outside of the Canadiens organization, currently part of the organization, but with their respective teams or on the team, that have stood out this week. So Logan Mailloux starts with his first NHL goal last night. 2 points in 2 NHL games for Logan Mailloux as he got the call up with the Caden Gooley injury happening. It was good to see Mike Matheson actually not going down with injury, so that was a relief to see. Logan Mailloux jumping up in the play, just reading it so well, getting himself in the slot and just sniping his first NHL goal. It was a beautiful play and a beautiful read from him, who had some tough reads in the preseason. And that's part of why maybe he didn't make the Canadiens out of camp. We also saw Jaden Struble get back into the lineup last night. We saw Arbor Jackeye be a healthy scratch against the Islanders. So that was maybe a message sent from Marty. A lot of folks, I would say media, specifically if you watch the Sick podcast a lot like I do, because my buddy Shane's on it, and I do enjoy Tony as well. A lot of criticism towards Arbor Jackeye and how he's been the least trusted defenseman on the Canadiens. So he sat this one out. Mike Pizzetta still hasn't even drawn into the lineup. So there's a lot to be discussed there. But we're going to focus, like I said, on the positives, on the Canadiens prospects specifically. So Ivan Demidov scored a goal earlier this week. And, despite still minimal still minimal ice time. One taker here, guys. Still minimal ice time with SKA St. Petersburg. He's still got 10 points in 17 games played, 5 goals, 5 assists for Ivan Demidov. When he gets on the ice, he's doing his best to make an impact, sometimes taking control of the play himself and creating a chance for himself. But he's doing it at a time when we really need to be encouraged as Canadiens fans, I think, with this, this start to the season. Lane Hudson, right? So Lane Hudson has 4 assists in 6 games played so far this season with the Canadiens. Overall, he has 6 points in 8 games played in the NHL so far. But the creativity and the confidence that we're seeing him utilize in the offensive zone, specifically those cross ice passes from within the offensive zone, created 2 chances all by himself last night in the ozone, and the Canadiens weren't even on the power play at that point, right? Setting up Juraj Slavkovsky for a glorious chance, and then another chance he set up the player who's he set up, the name's escaping me right now. But Lane Hudson, a player to be encouraged about, who's currently on the Canadiens. Logan Mailloux, we already talked about. Owen Beck scoring his first pro goal with the Laval Rocket yesterday on an assist from my guy Filip Mesar, who I have become a Filip Mesar apologist here for some reason, because I still am a firm Filip Mesar believer. We'll get to his numbers in a second. But Filip Mesar was falling down as he made the pass to Owen Beck, who had time and space. He rips it for his first pro goal in the AHL with the Laval Rocket. That was just fun to see from Owen, and really proud of him for that. So Filip Mesar himself, in 4 games played with the Laval Rocket, has 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points in those 4 games with Laval. So the last 2 seasons, he wasn't ready to make the jump to the pro leagues, right? And last year, I even thought, when I first saw him 2 years ago, actually, with the Kitchener Rangers, I thought immediately that he could use another year in junior. And last year he did. He took another year in junior, and now he's in his first year as a pro player. And the 26th overall pick for the Canadiens in 2022, Mesar is going to be, I believe, a firm, important contributor on the Canadiens power play in the future, whether it's on the first or second unit. I believe it'll, of course, start on the second unit. But I think the Canadiens plan long-term. We all know how the power play still needs improvement. We want to see Lane Hudson quarterbacking that first unit eventually. But I think, if I'm thinking the way Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton would like to, and even Marty St. Louis, is that the Canadiens eventually want to have 2 strong power play units, not just one that's a killer. You want to have 2 solid options. So I think Filip Mesar will be a solid option on the Canadiens' second power play of the future. That's what I see him being. His creativity, his offensive ability, his playmaking skills are too hard to ignore. And now, if he can keep this up throughout the Laval Rocket season here, his first pro year, it's an encouraging sign. It's an encouraging sign for Phil Mesar. Jakub Dobeš, the Laval Rocket are starting off the season 2-0, and Dobeš is having himself a decent start and made quite the impression in Canadiens training camp. And many felt that he actually beat out Caden Primo for a roster spot. Some folks did, Tony Marinaro being one of them. I bring up Tony a lot, don't I? Okay, so quick shout out to Oliver Kapanen and Emil Heineman for scoring in the shootout last night. Heineman has been impressive lately. He's been getting better and better and more confident as time goes on. He's a feisty player. He kind of reminds me of Paul Byron and how he used to play. Paul Byron wasn't big, but he played big. And that's what was encouraging from Emil Heineman. He's got 2 goals already this season. He had chances last night. He had a nice snipe in that shootout, as I mentioned. Oliver Kapanen had a nice snipe, and these guys just had a moment there where they kept the Canadiens alive to try to get the second point, which they didn't ultimately, but they gave them a chance, each of them, because most of the Canadiens' top guys didn't score in the shootout we saw last night, right? All right, Jake Evans. Jake Evans has been having himself a season. It's a contract year for Jake Evans, but he has been one of the best top 3 forwards on the Canadiens this season so far. He's playing so solid defensively. He's a huge contributor on the penalty kill, and he's a reason why the Canadiens have a top 3 penalty kill in the NHL right now. As it sits, the Canadiens are actually 3rd for penalties killed, over 90%. They're only sitting behind the Boston Bruins and Utah, the Utah Hockey Club right now. They're 3rd overall in the penalty kill, but the Canadiens are still getting penalized far too much for our liking. I'm sure you can agree to that. All right. Jaden Struble drew into the lineup. I think I already mentioned that, but it was refreshing to see. I'd like to see Arbor Xhekaj and Jaden Struble paired together, but I don't know how they're going to make room. They're probably going to go through a bit of a rotation. And I didn't have his name on here, but I'll give a shout out to Justin Barron, who had a tougher second half of the game last night against the Islanders. But I think he's been better overall lately. He's been getting a little better, but he just still, the consistency isn't always there for him defensively, but he's been better. I will say that about Justin Barron. He's been better. I've been the most critical of him of any Canadiens player probably in the last several years. Caden Primo, he kept the Canadiens in the game last night and bounced back after that tough first period, letting in those 2 goals that I'm sure he'd like to have back. Mainly one of them. I think it was the second goal actually that he would have liked to have back. It was just kind of a 2-on-1, but he was beat clean, right? So I'm sure he wanted to have that back. All right. So that was pretty much everything I think I wanted to go through in terms of all the players. And I didn't even get to him. I'm wrong, actually. Michael Hage. Michael Hage is off to a good start with Michigan, the University of Michigan right now, in 6 games played, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in 6 games, for the University of Michigan. I saw Eric Engels tweeting out that if he keeps this up, he's not going to be in university very long. We could see him. I could see him in Laval as soon as next season. I know that's really jumping the gun maybe and not seeing enough of him play, but just his size, his skill, that smooth skating, the really solid hands that he has, it's a possibility. It's a possibility anyway. But that's everything. I'm going to wrap it up there, you guys. Leave your comments down below. Are you encouraged by how the Canadiens' future looks, not just the current version of the Canadiens, because we know next year they could look fairly different with Christian Dvorak. I think they got to consider keeping Jake Evans at this point, by the way, with Yoel Armia's contract coming up. There's going to be opportunities for guys to move in here, and we know Ivan Demidov, of course, is one of them. Patrick Laine, when he gets back in, man, even this season, it'll certainly be a lift for the Habs. So leave your comments down below. Let's focus on the future still. I think we need a bit more patience. As much as we're tired of hearing that, we were all kind of sold that the Canadiens were going to be better right out of the gate this year. They're very so-so right now, but there's hope. There's still hope for this development path, at least I would say. I'm not sure about this season necessarily being a playoff contending season. I don't think it necessarily is, but I do think our prospects are keeping the future Habs in the mix year after year after year, and not just in the mix. They're going to be playoff contenders sooner than later in the next 2-3 years on a regular basis. This week's Canadiens prospect showing showed me that. So I hope you agree. I hope you saw that. Leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Talk soon. Ciao.